Hello, it's Clint and Stacy again, and it's RV solar upgrade part 0.75. We're almost at step one. We've got the trailer. We actually have the trailer now. We went and picked it up a couple of days ago. It's in the driveway and it's ready to start installing stuff into. The batteries are still in the basement, however, and there's a little bit of preparation with the trailer to kind of get it ready to start accepting all this stuff. But one of the things that happened during the time that the batteries have been down here is I've just been sort of doing some learning about the differences between lead acid batteries, which is what we've had typically in the past, and these lithium iron phosphate batteries that are made by EcoWorthy, which is essentially a Chinese Amazon battery. And I at first thought that maybe some of the issues that I was having with these was due to the fact that they were made in China and were relatively affordable when compared to like the battle-born batteries and some of the more expensive ones that you see. Basically, the issue that I was having is I was having a difficult time getting them balanced. So what that means is getting each of the batteries to equal voltages so that when you hook them into series, because if you watch the first video, the inverter that we're using on our trailer is actually a 24 volt inverter, which is different than the 12 volts that the fifth wheel runs on. So I've got some sort of interesting ideas, I guess, to pull all that together. But at any rate, these are 12 volt batteries, which means we have to series connect them so that to make them into 24 volts. And in the process of doing that, I was finding that the batteries were drifting apart from each other. So I did some research and found out that there are things out there that are meant to sort of address this problem, which I guess can be somewhat sort of common in lithium iron phosphate batteries. Victron makes this piece of equipment here, which is simply just called a battery balancer. And the point of this piece of equipment is that it takes your high battery and or your upper battery and your lower battery. So in this case, these three batteries across the top are the top portion of the 24 volt battery, and the bottom portion here is the other part of the 24 volt battery connected by a jumper in the middle. So currently I have these two batteries connected in 24 volt, and earlier this morning I ran a load on them to bring them down a little bit from the other four, which are currently hooked up parallel right now, averaging out into each other. So these batteries are all the same voltage right now. Which is 13.61. At 12 volts. So once we put these into 24 volts, that number will double, which is what this battery currently is set up at. So in here we've got 26.65, which if I had taken these apart, they would work out to about 13.32 and a half, which is about 0.3 of a volt lower than the other four. So what this device is supposed to do is detect anything that is over 0.2 difference from here to here, and start bleeding off amps from the ones that are high to eventually even out to the one that's on the other side, so that they go back to balance again. It's important that this is the case because when the battery is being worked as one unit, you want them to charge at approximately the same rate and also discharge it at approximately the same rate. So if you have, this top one sort of drifting apart from the bottom all the time, eventually that can create a problem where the top side of the battery is being overcharged, but the bottom one is causing the charger to stop prematurely. So this is part of the solution. Part of the problem as well that I've also discovered, and I did this by accident, but we've got these jumpers here, or these are 4-gauge cables that I bought a roll of this actually to make the interconnects for these batteries. And then these are ones that I had from our old lithium ion, from our old lead acid setup. So just to look at these is, I mean, right off the bat, I didn't realize this at the time, but what I was using previously was 2-gauge versus 4-gauge. And that's important because the size of the wire decides how much current can travel from here to here without heating the wire and causing a safety hazard. So one of the things that I didn't really think about when I was getting these batteries is that these batteries are 150 amp hours a piece. So, and they're also 1C batteries, which what 1C batteries means is that the entire 150 amps that is stored in this battery can be discharged from this battery in the rate of 1 hour. So it is possible for there to be fairly major current going back and forth to these when you're connecting them to each other with these wires. Your typical lead acid deep cycle battery in a 12 volt form is 100 amp hours, and all lead acid batteries that I know of are at best a half of a C or even a quarter of a C. So that means that half of that 100 amp hours or even a quarter of that 100 amp hours is only available to pull from those batteries at any given time. So the wire gauge is a little bit less important on lead acid because the batteries just simply can't dish out the power as quick as a lithium iron phosphate battery can. Problem number 2. When I got this stuff off of Amazon, it is very important when you're buying cable off of Amazon to pay attention to what you're buying. And I fell for this, and I shouldn't have. I used to work in a home and car audio dealer, so like I know wire pretty well. But you have to read these ads very, very carefully because they advertise this stuff as though it's copper wire. But what you end up with, or if you read into the ad far enough, is copper clad aluminum. So aluminum wire is only capable of moving about half the amps as a piece of copper wire the same size. So this particular cable here is maybe at best capable of moving 50 amps. This one here is capable of probably more like 100. I'm just guessing here, but it's probably more. It's going to be about double, if not more than that, because it's also a heavier gauge as well. So you can, if you actually, well, actually this is a bad example because they're slightly different gauges. But I mean, if you pick that wire up and hold it, and then do the same with this one. Oh. There's a massive difference in weight. Yeah. So copper is heavier, it's more flexible, and the other thing about it is that the connectors that typically are used on connecting these batteries are made out of copper as well. So that's what we see here. I've got some decent copper battery lugs on the end of this aluminum wire and crimped onto the end for a cold welded complete cable here. But because copper expands and at a different rate than aluminum when it heats up and cools down, this is eventually over time going to fail because the two metals behave differently when you heat up and cool down, which is going to be more of a problem with this than with this because this can't handle as much current to start with. So I have the solution for it. I've got some 2.0 cable here that was left over from a different inverter that we had that I'm going to cut up and make into interconnects to replace this stuff. I don't have enough of this to do it, and honestly, since I have enough of this, I may as well overgauge the cables, and since I've got it, I have enough connectors to do it. So I don't have that set up at the moment, but for the purpose of this experiment, what I've done is I've discharged these two batteries here to about a half of a volt from where the other ones sit so that we can hook up this device, and I can show you quickly how it works. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this parallel stuff apart, and then we'll put it back into series again. So you'll notice I've got this very high-end looking piece of bag wrapped around the end of my wrench. The reason that I've done that is because this is a metal wrench, and I don't know for any of you that have played with this kind of stuff in the past, if you are taking one of these off and the end of this ends up hitting the one over here, it can be a fireworks show, and you can damage the bolts, you can damage the battery, you can maybe damage yourself. So by having this on there, it's not conductive anymore, and I can accidentally touch something and it doesn't harm anything. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the two batteries here that I discharged down about 1/2 volt, and I'm going to move them both so that they're in the bottom part of this 24 volt battery, so that there is now a variance between these three and these three. So and then we'll hook this whole thing back up now as a 24 volt unit. So the way that we do that is we're going to jump the positive and negative on each of these. This is a 24 volt battery, this is a 24 volt battery, and this is a 24 volt battery. So we'll connect each of them, each of the 12s together here, here, and here, making those three batteries. So and I'm going to use this crappy cable for the sake of showing you how this works, but once we get this into the RV, this is all going to be changed. Okay, so now we've got our three separate 24 volt banks, and then now we'll parallel these together, making all three of them one big 24 volt battery. So by doing that, we're going to connect the positives together on the low side of the battery and the negatives together on the high side of the battery. Okay, and then the last step is to connect the inverter to all this. So on a single unit 24 volt bank like this, the way that you want to hook your inverter up is you want to grab the negative off of the outside battery over here, and then you want to grab the positive on the other outside, so that it's pulling through this whole thing as one piece. So this inverter has been turned off for a little while, so the capacitors that are in it are probably discharged a little bit. So what I do for this last one is I have a little 50 watt resistor here, so I just touch that to the one end of the cable and then the other end to the lead that you want to plug this into. So, and just hold it there for a second. Sometimes you'll get a little spark if the capacitors are dead enough. So, and after, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds or something, you can take that off. This takes the capacitors to where they belong, and then now I can hook this one up and it won't make a big spark. So you can do that with in this case it's 24 volts, but you can do that with a 24 volt light bulb. I've even heard of some people doing it with a graphite pencil. I've never tried that though. Okay, so now the last step is this piece of equipment here. So Victron very specifically says that they want you to connect the, and these are not color coordinated. This is just wire that I pulled out of AC extension cord. It's 16 gauge wire, so it's not color matched to negative or whatever. But this on this particular unit, there's three things here: 0 volts, common volt, and 24 volts. So 0 volts on here means the black negative lead off of the outside battery. 24 volts means the red on the other outside battery, and then common means the negative off the jumper for between the two sides of the 24 volt battery. So we'll do the negative one first. And then we'll grab the one in the middle. Okay, so the shunt is just fired up on here, and you can see that it's at 26.9 volts, which technically is not high enough to actually get this device to turn on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the charger part of this inverter in. So just as soon as I did that, it now is showing that we're getting 6.5 amps into the battery, and that immediately took it up to 27 volts. So the nice thing about this SunGold inverter is that you can actually adjust how many amps are coming out of it for charging power. So this little knob on the top here next to the battery selector is how you do that. So I have it turned all the way down, but it'll go up to, I believe, a 30 amp charge if you want. So I'm just going to crank this up to see if I can get that 27.2 that we're looking for here. So we were at 27.3 now, and that's energized the battery balancer. So I'm just going to turn this back down now. And you can see on here that this little orange light is just turned on, saying that there's a voltage discrepancy between the lower battery and the higher battery. So now what this is doing, if we measure the amps coming out of this wire has got a half of an amp traveling through it. Where's this one? So it appears as though this is the one that it's trying to correct, which would make sense because these are the two low ones that I put down here. So it's detected that this side is too high, and so now it's bleeding off in this 0.67 of an amp, trying to get it back in line with the bottom ones. So it's I've done this on purpose. I feel to make this do this so that you can see how it works, but it's pretty neat. I honestly think that once getting the proper copper jumpers into here, that the majority of the balancing problems that I was having are probably going to go away just with the better cable. But if for some reason that's not enough, or if we put like a massive load on this and we get like a 30 amp solar day or something where there's a lot of jumping around, I know that personally I'm going to feel better knowing that I've got this sort of keeping an eye on things, because that will sort of help bring that back into line. So that's about it for this. Hopefully that's valuable with regards to sort of, you know, something that you might encounter when you're trying to make sense of Chinese batteries and wondering, like, is it the Chinese batteries maybe that are the problem, or is it something else? In this particular case, it's my opinion that the Chinese batteries are fine, but when you're buying cable, make sure, like this is same stuff, that's copper clad aluminum. There's 50 feet worth in this, and this entire thing weighs less than this, which is only one. So if you're going to buy a cable off of Amazon, just make sure that you read the fine print and make sure that you're buying at least 98% oxygen-free pure copper, because it's really the only thing you want to put into anything that is passing electricity, especially when it's like high current like this. So thanks guys, hopefully that's helpful, and we'll catch you on the next one.